Hi, my name is Richard Redderay and I'm the Business Development Leader here at Binsfeld Engineering. Today I'm going to walk through the mechanical installation of the TorqueTrak TPM2 torque and power monitoring system. Let's get started. Each TorqueTrak TPM2 is shipped with the following components: a multi-piece rotating collar assembly with hardware, a multi-piece stationary ring assembly with hardware, mounting tabs, stationary interface, 10 feet of power cable and 10 feet of data cable, Loctite, anti-seize compound, a USB with manual and configuration software, optionally an RS422 to RS232 converter, and optionally an installation kit. To install the TorqueTrak TPM2, you will need the following tools: 2 deep well 16mm or 5/8 inch sockets, 2 ratchets, an 8mm or 5/16 inch socket, and a 5/32 inch Allen wrench. You will also need strain gauges, strain gauge application kit, and protective coating to seal up the installation. Before installing the TorqueTrak TPM2 system, it is important to plan out the two primary constraints of an installation: the strain gauge location and the stationary interface mounting location. There needs to be enough room to install a strain gauge on the shaft, while at the same time installing the TorqueTrak TPM2 in a way that keeps nearby metal away from the inductive surfaces. Your Binsfeld representative will help you through the application review process prior to sale to ensure a successful installation. For the purposes of this demonstration, we will assume that there is plenty of available shaft area for the strain gauge installation, and that the primary constraint is the mounting bracket location. We will therefore start our installation from the mounting bracket location. If you purchase an installation kit from Binsfeld Engineering, you'll notice in the kit 3 main components. You have an installation bracket here, a template that is machined to your particular shaft diameter, and then assembly hardware. The way that this works is you take your template and you'll install it onto the bracket using the provided hardware and the wing nuts on the back. And once you have this set up, this will essentially set the location of the bracket from the center of your shaft. So I have a sample shaft here, and this template will mount right up to the shaft, and that will give you the location to either weld or bolt on the bracket. The rest of the hardware with the kit is used to assemble your stationary MCU unit on the TPM2 to the bracket. Once the bracket is installed, you need to determine where on the shaft to mount your strain gauge. Typically you want to be about 4 to 5 inches from the front face of the bracket. Install your strain gauge, which we have other videos of how to do that, and then move on to the next step. Bolt the TPM2 stationary interface to the mounting bracket using the 5/16 inch hardware provided. After securely mounting the stationary interface to its bracket, assemble and mount the stationary ring around the shaft. Ensure that the face marked front is facing forward and that the copper mounts onto the adjacent copper on the MCU. This orientation puts the coil on the front side of the mounting splice tab. Apply Loctite to the ring assembly hardware and torque to 2.7 foot-pounds or 3.6 Newton meters. Finally, install mounting tabs onto the ring and secure to a nearby structure using the supplied hardware or some wire. Determine the mounting location and orientation of the rotating collar. The transmitter and counterweight should be facing towards the stationary coil. The transmitter should be nearby the strain gauge, and the spacing between the stator and rotor should be such that the outer surface is flush with the front face of the stationary interface. Assemble the rotating coil to the shaft using M10 collar bolts. Bolts should face in opposite directions. Apply anti-seize compound to the threads of all M10 collar bolts. Alternately tighten the collar bolts, keeping the gaps between the rotating collar sections equal until the specified bolt torque of 15 foot-pounds or 20 Newton meters is reached. Using the pre-attached wires on the transmitter, determine the length of cable needed to connect the transmitter to the strain gauge and cut the length. Connect the transmitter wires to the strain gauge. Confirm the functionality of this system by looking at the LEDs on the front of the stationary interface. The rotor, stator, and torque LEDs should be green. Rotor and stator LEDs will flash while establishing communication, then turn solid green. The speed will flash upon startup, assuming that the configured minimum speed threshold is achieved. There is also an LED on the transmitter that should be solid green as well. So that concludes the installation instructions for a TorqueTrak TPM2 system. If you have any questions about this or want to talk about your application, contact us today.